brief introduction of myself. I'm Gary Kennedy. I'm a civil engineer and a certified project management professional. I'm based here in St. John's, Newfoundland, originally from Conception Bay South. And I've worked 30 years for the marine sector. I've got some ocean connections. I've done a good bit of work on land too, but going back to my beginnings there, back in like 84, 85, 86, I was in the Naval Reserves based here in Newfoundland, but I did have a wonderful summer in Esquimalt over in BC on naval vessels and training over there. In the early parts of my career, I was on the Hibernia project. You can see the GBS formed up there, parts of it. I've also had good industry experience in the ocean sector with lifeboat R&D. I was project manager administrator for provincial government, looking after some of the offshore studies in new launching systems and new types of vessels. I also had some good work with Poseidon Marine. We put together a project management system for the ferry vessels for Newfoundland and Labrador new builds and refits. I also Cougar helicopters with putting new floats and other systems, gearbox adjustments and so on to the Cougar helicopter fleet, and I helped out with project planning and scheduling and project management services for that. I also was project manager for Harbour Grace Ocean Enterprises, which was called Dallas Welding at the time, and we did the refurbishment of 3 tension barges for the Hebron project. That was very interesting. And I have 2 sons who have been involved. Alexander, my oldest guy, he's doing ocean mapping at the Marine Institute, just about finished here now. We have my youngest son, Andrew, who is doing biochemistry. So the fishing aspects, natural environmental aspects with the fishery or offshore in general, and keeping everything clean. So we're all surrounded by these marine opportunities. One of the first things I'd like to do at the beginning of any presentation is to remember that safety is number 1. And for that reason, and for the reason in many organizations and many temporary project teams and many industry and commercial locations, that a safety moment has come to be a very important part of the fabric and information we can share at regular and spontaneous intervals. So this is just an example of driving safety, and this could be with your workplace vehicle, and it could also be, of course, with your home vehicle. So safety at home is just as important as safety at work. You don't necessarily have to be a new organization at all. It's just a new team. And not just the members needing to be new, but maybe you've got 1 or 2 beginner members, but the team is new because there are different people on a different project. So maybe everybody on your team has lots of experience or a fair amount of experience, and they've done their roles, but they could be from other organizations. It could be a team made up of 2 or 3 or 4 organizations sourced from different places for their expertise. But they've all become very seasoned at what they do, but that hardly matters when you've got a new team. It helps a little bit because it gives you some knowledge and experience, but when you got a new team, you've got a different project. Obviously a project is a unique undertaking, and so there's always something different about a new project. Your people that you are sitting next to, at least virtually on a computer or in a room, your teammates, I doubt if all of you people have done the exact same team you've got right now on a previous project. You might have done a close one, but not necessarily the exact same team. And therefore, you've got different questions about your roles and responsibilities. And you might have even a very mature organization where you've got all the roles and responsibilities typically that you do on projects written down somewhere. And you go to the files, and this is what you do, this, and this. But even that doesn't cover everything, because it's a unique project. You may need to do something slightly different. One of those roles might need to change. And another thing is those role descriptions may need to vary. And let's face it, people are busy. They've got lots of other more interesting things to do, they believe, but you've actually got to read the darn things, and you got to read them together so that you know for sure you're confirming generally what the other people are doing and how you're handing off work from one person to another. So this is what we mean by new teams. It doesn't mean that this is a junior course or a junior webinar. It doesn't mean that it's the first time the company or organization has done something like this. It means it's a different project, and it's also a different combination of people. It's like sports teams. You mix up two good hockey teams to play in an all-star game, and you've got to kind of get together and make a plan. And even though you've played your position in that role for many years and you've been very good at it, now you've got different people mixed up, and you're going to make sure you brief each other on what you're going to do, what you plan to do, what your responsibilities are. So just quickly looking down through the agenda here, we're going to look at team success. We're going to look at organizational structures. What are client requirements? What about team alignment? What about project or product requirements? And how do you use this stuff with decision gate systems? And where does this come into play? How about project management systems? What's that concept? Decision support packages, project scope, change management, all this good stuff, and different tools there like the division of responsibilities matrix and responsibility assignment matrix, progress reporting, and just we're going to close out then the webinar. So it's a specific set of learnings, and I keep learning too. I'm glad to get feedback from people. I'm glad to get questions. I'm glad for somebody to clarify something for me, or correct me, or give me new ideas. You know, because as far as I'm concerned, we're sat at a round table. I'm not at the top of a theater somewhere in front of everybody. I'm amongst all you good, experienced people, or maybe inexperienced, or good mixture, and we're here to carve out the product together, you know, and learn together. Now I'd like to start off with talking about super teams failure. I think everybody, or most people anyway, are aware of teams, even in a sports environment, that put together all these individual all-stars who are like the world's best hockey players, the world's best soccer players, football players, curling teams, and so on. And you put together all these individual stars who individually have done so well. And sometimes that brings success, but in lots of times that we can remember, going back through the books and even recent history, some of these teams with absolutely incredible individuals on them didn't make out so well. They ended up failing, losing badly to other teams that perhaps didn't have so many stars. So we've got the 1981 Canada Cup hockey loss to the Soviets. It was just a big loss for everybody, and Canada had great players on. And then of course, just because you don't have all these individual stars does not mean that you aren't going to win, because the Olympic USA hockey team in 1980 were absolutely fabulous. as a team, and hardly anybody knew any of the individual players. So there's something to be said for teamwork and team cohesion and team efforts, and that's a good way to start. Let's talk about project organizations. Let's look at the fact that when somebody asks for an org chart on a project, sometimes people on the edges who might be first-timers or not familiar with project teams will end up bringing out of the files a corporate org chart. And usually that's not the case. Almost always the project team org chart is going to be much different than the corporate org chart. Corporate org chart is a long-term operational list of people in a chart as to who reports to who operationally and administratively. But a project is set up as a special team, and it could be different organizations, could be 2 or 3 people from other companies and organizations, departments, meshed in with other people. It's a special team. It has unique project management roles. It's only for that project as a temporary undertaking. So you're building something or composing something, putting together some software, putting together construction for a building, that sort of thing. It's a temporary undertaking. It may not be full-time. Some projects are small and they're piecemeal, and but you have a temporary team put together. And like I said, may need some outside personnel to drop in, some specialists or authorities. And there's a differentiation. You have in an organization a functional supervisor, so those people report to and take instructions from, when it comes to the project instructions, from the project manager, and for project activities. And but that person still has an administrative supervisor. So that person could be from another organization or another department, or has somebody in their own discipline department, like a structural department, a structural engineering department, or a mechanical, or could be environmental. And they actually have a supervisor there that looks after their year-round tasks, year-round performance. And so there's usually a functional supervisor who's separate from the administrative supervisor. So we have the project team, the owner's project team underneath the project manager, and we have engineering and controls, human resources, could be an ops and maintenance rep, could be a health, safety, and environment rep. Sometimes there's quality, sometimes there's risk, put in that same title. Good to watch all of your constraints on your job and make sure you have these areas covered, and other project representatives that you can have. And again, it's kind of flavored towards construction and engineering, but I'm sure that in other types of projects, like software projects, that there are a distribution of people that have their specialties. So what's very important at the beginning of a project, and not only the beginning of a project, I mean, that's critical, but at the beginning of stages of a project. So each stage has a set of unique deliverables and objectives, and when you get through that stage, you want to realign your team, and you can have a project kickoff and alignment meeting, and you can do that at the very beginning of the project, which you really very critical that you get that done. And then you really should have it done at the beginning of every stage. So There are, for kickoff meetings, there are standard agenda templates, and these vary with the enterprise environmental factors, which is a nice acronym I've borrowed from the Project Management Institute. And that's the culture and equipment and type of business tools that the particular organization, the performing organization, has. So it may be software, it may be paper, it could be individual files on laptops, it could be central computer systems, could be clouds, and so on. So that's just an example of enterprise environmental factors. And also the type of business that you're in, whether it's mining or whether it's refining, heavy civil construction, commercial construction, marine work, shipbuilding, R&D, all of that good stuff. And it includes alignment sessions. So you have a kickoff meeting and you fill in, you follow the agenda templates, and there's lots of good recommended ones out there. You cover all the bases. But in the alignment section of the meeting, which is the last half, give yourself lots of time. This is not something to take lightly if you want to be successful and have less problems in the future. And it could be the last half of the kickoff meeting, typically, and you can go longer. You can make it a few hours, or you can go for a break and then come back and really dig in on the alignment, because we want to make sure everybody's singing from the same songbook, basically. And we mean this technically. We're not trying to get personalities and that involved. We're using the good traits and good characters of people, but it really is a technical process, and it's not so much how to talk to people and how to communicate. We're assuming people got that covered, which is still very important. But now we're going into to dish out the technical responsibilities for the most part. And by dishing out and allocating, and it could be corrected. Maybe some people don't quite agree or don't quite understand, and they had the same title on another job, but the role seems different now, and that's typical. That's not strange. When the first allocation goes out, this is time to sort it out now before things ramp up, people get busy, and big money is starting to flow, and construction and safety issues and that are coming on, and that's the wrong time to figure out who's supposed to be doing what. Should get that ironed out right away. So there's typically a prescribed procedure with questions and responses to each team member, and they're listening to what the other people understand they think they do. So if they're doing something in cost control, this is what I believe I do. I had the same role last time, but you're telling me mine is going to be a little bit different this time. Well, okay. So this is what I think I do. And then the scheduler says, well, I thought I did some of that stuff, but maybe I don't now this project. So if so-and-so has this, then I guess what's left is I have this right here. And for scheduling purposes, I'll do this. And the cost person and I will jointly hand this into so-and-so. And that's the good technical, it's not technical like getting the strength of concrete, but it's certainly technical work responsibilities getting ironed out between people. And that's very important. So let's get that done. Let's get roles and responsibilities figured out. Let's make sure there are no harmful overlaps, wasteful, or gaps, which are terrible. And then make sure we're all, again, singing from the same songbook, and make this more of a success than if this wasn't done. You'd probably have a lot of trouble, because people out there assume that they have a certain role title, and they assume they got the same roles and responsibilities underneath their name. And because it's a different company, different organization, different team, different project, we're not right about that. That can't be assumed. there's some give and take in what they have to do, and let's get that ironed out right away. So this is one great big complex machine. There are so many interfaces between groups, and it's just a visual demonstration of the idea that there's a project steering committee, which are the upper executives, decision makers, authorities, the owner's project team, which are the people who are specialists in performing projects and the resources for making that happen. And that's important. They report to the project steering committee and are monitored and are in the communication loop with the committee. Then, we could usually have engineering consultants. So the engineers might not be all within the owner's project team, and maybe a bigger project, and you have engineering consultants in there. And they're part of the project, but there's a number of them and so on. So we have our project engineer typically looking after all these people, and maybe there's even subdivisions of that. You could have civil, mechanical, electrical, software, and all kinds of other engineering. It could be some field people there, it could be surveying, all that business. So that's good stuff. And then you've got construction contractors. So somewhere along the way, there's an interface between the engineering consultants, possibly, if that's the way it's set up, and or it could be between the owner's project team and the construction contractors. Quite often, I see it as engineering consultants for the most part in some organizations' projects. They are trusted to watch the contractors in their domain, to guide the contractors in their domain. So then you have trades workers who work with the construction contractors. So we've got quite a matrix of people, and we're all there to safely, cleanly, and ethically get good work done. But even though it's simple just to list off some of these identities, when you look at the interfaces there and how information and directions are passed along there, we've got a bit of a complex situation. And this is only simple compared to what really happens out there in some big projects. So it's a good view, I guess, of the overview of the different organizations and groups of people, types of people, teams that are on the project. But this is where the owner's project team also fits in. So this is just, again, a graphic representation of aligning all the teams, aligning the people, aligning the personnel, all the women and men that are in this effort to get this project done. And we want to make sure that we're all heading in the same direction, and we're doing it safely, and everything is fine, spending efficiently, and monitoring what we're doing, and good safe work is getting done. The construction and the installations are safe and work, and we have to have good interfaces between all these parties. So this is just a real photographic demonstration of a screed crew on a bridge. Actually, it's East Wilson Bridge, and I'm there. I'm taking the picture, but I'm up there in the top left photo with the blue jacket and the white hat on the far right. And we all had a very wonderful construction season with these guys. They're Western Construction from Stephenville back in 1995, and they were absolutely wonderful to work with. Safety, of course, was number one. You can see the glasses and steel toe boots and hats and all that good stuff, air protection and so on. And the superintendent, George, was outstanding. And these guys work together. Some are brothers and cousins and so on. They all know each other. They've worked together for many years. And watching these guys place concrete on a deck or anywhere, but especially a deck pour, which is a little more complex than some of the other pours. And I'm reminded that it's supposed to be placement of concrete instead of pour, but everybody uses the word pour every now and then, but contractually it's placement of concrete. And these guys were like any all-star hockey team or all-star soccer team when it came to who stayed at the back, who stayed in the middle, who was in the front, who pointed to what direction, to who, to tweak something, to get a lump out of the concrete, or put the concrete vibrator in a certain location, or rake something a little thicker. And it was quiet for the most part. I mean, you could hear a few engines going there, some motors and that, but these guys had it down. Every now and then you hear a voice and someone say, "Hey, over there in the corner, touch up this," and wow. I've seen a lot of deck pours, and most of them were pretty good, but this was outstanding, watching these guys work. And I was glad to be with them that summer. And that's what alignment in a physical sense tends to be. And I could have shown, somebody on a racing yacht, or a pit crew for a Formula One race or whatever. People are aligned. They're planned. They know what they have to do. They've done it before. They've rehearsed it, and they're doing well. And the guy with one machine like the wheelbarrow knows he's not supposed to have the rake, because the guy on the rake knows he's supposed to stay in the middle and do this and that and so on. And it was magic to watch. And I'm glad they agreed to be in the picture with me. And that's good stuff. But on a bigger sense, this is the sort of thing we're looking for with any project team that's indoors in a project office, in a bunch of rented trailers on a construction site, or in a skyscraper, having a meeting at the front end of a project about $1 billion project. We want people singing from the same songbook. We want them to know what their parts and roles are, and only then can we really ramp up without having big problems of gaps and overlaps. So this also brings up, when you look at the yellow bars between the groups there, is project interface management. And generally for smaller projects, it's project managers who do this. But when you get into bigger projects, like some of these big mining projects or offshore or so on, you can have project interface managers who could be one or two or many going around on a project, making sure that the groups are connecting with all the functions and directions and understandings on the project. Reference Project Management Institute and the PMBOK Guide, because I know they've got lots of really good standard advice across all industries. And this sort of project interface management is also seen as an important aspect of project integration management. This is a sort of entertaining set of photos here about people's concept of what they understand they want, or what their client wants. And there's another graphic out there that's very popular. I decided I'd make my own rather than copy it and look for copyright permission from these good people, whoever made up that tire swing analogy, using the trees and the tire. And there's many different ways to hang a
a tire swing, but I've made it my own demo here. And what do people perceive we need from the project? And it's not far-fetched that people in different departments with different specialties, different areas, different perspectives understand they want. So here's just transportation, for example. Somebody wants to get from A to B on wheels. Well, there's many different perceptions of what people want on wheels. So I won't go through this in detail, but hopefully you'll enjoy yourself a little bit and look at where I assume some people in some departments might want to travel on wheels. And that just goes to show that the perception of people on a project team of who they are, what their names of their roles are. For example, there's many different understandings of what a surveyor is, a quantity surveyor, and all that business. So what we're going to discuss now is the alignment, those gold-colored bars between the gears in the previous diagram. And just from a methodology point of view, a conceptual point of view, what are we aligning between the groups? And for this case here, we have alignment between the project steering committee and the owner's project team. And the project steering committee have prime interests. They are looking after the portfolio and program management processes from a high level. They will be attending meetings, and they also have a big interest in the project requirements. What are the owner's project objectives, in other terms? They will be very interested in the communications plans. What is the information coming from the project core team and arriving with the steering committee? There would be typically monthly project status meetings, but it could be bi-weekly. So that's the interface, or that's at least a general overview of the interface between the project steering committee and the owner's project team. And that's where that type of stewardship has to take place. So if we look at the same diagram, I've got a star put there between the project steering committee and the owner's project team. And that's where the alignment is taking place. It's not a contract. It's not between, in most cases, it's not between the steering committee and the owner's team. It is an understanding, a diligence, a role description, set of responsibilities. So there has to be an understanding, an alignment between the owner's project team and the project steering committee, and so that everybody's heading in the same direction, everybody's doing things correctly. So even though a commercial type of contract doesn't exist between the steering committee and the owner's project team, at least in most cases, we have sponsors project requirements, or some people call them project requirements or sponsors project objectives. But if we go with the Project Management Institute terminology, we have project requirements, and they're unique, they're internal, and they're in lieu of a formal contract, and they're evergreen. So there's a first pass made. The major requirements are spelled out, and other criteria come along the way to further elaborate on those requirements. So it's documented, it's revisited and updated as an evergreen document. The focus is not on technical specifications and direct engineering language. It's focused on the sponsor's business needs. corporate strategies, and functional performance, rather than getting down into the specifications and scope of the job. It's more of what are the business needs, what are we trying to accomplish, and to reinforce what I just said, don't confuse it with the scope baseline. That belongs to the owner's project team, not the steering committee. So, in sponsors project requirements, if we're talking, making an example here, a very vague overview, I guess. We have project scope management. You can refer to Chapter 5 of the PMBOK Guide of the Project Management Institute. The 6th edition is what I'm referring to. There's always updates. And the challenge with sponsors project requirements is when the project management receives a requirements list from a sponsor and the project steering committee instead of a scope list. And that's to be expected. They really should not prescribe from the project steering committee scope. They should list their business needs, business requirements. If we were given from a steering committee, if I was the project manager representing a project team, and I could be given a list like list A, which says things from the sponsor steering committee saying it should be a 3-story parking garage, rock wall fascia decorations, all solar roof panels, water and sewer should go to Adams Street, 4.5 meter steel plate hoarding, 24/7 construction flaggers. That sort of list. Is that what we're looking for in a project requirements list? Now let's look at another list, list B, which is a modification and an improvement on list A. For list B, we would say very safe detours, designed for traffic management. We want good temporary site visuals and safety. We want to collaborate and work with the city management and select the water and sewer intersections, tie-ins. We need a 30-year forecast using parking for a facility. We want an exterior decor to blend with the area, and we want efficient, feasible heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, perhaps solar. And the question is, why is list B better than list A? Well, list B is more accurately the business and customer requirements. It doesn't tell you how high or how long. It doesn't give you mechanical expectations. It lists the challenges for the engineers and other designers and architects to succeed in meeting the owner's objectives, the sponsor's objectives, rather than the sponsors try to prescribe the items in list A. That's too much information. That's information that could be wrong because the design has not started. There could be concept selections. You could have different types of items that can be used for doing this improvement to this shopping center. So that's the difference between requirements and scope and specifications. For Configuration of projects. Here's an example of a decision gate system, and most of you people might recognize this as a waterfall configuration, and the stage gate is within this waterfall system. And the stage gate or decision gate terminology fluctuates from one sector or one company to another. They're basically quality gates, and at those quality gates, there's a significant meeting amongst the team and the steering committee and with the gatekeepers to help make the decision what needs to be improved before moving forward or moving forward. And there are different deliverables in each stage. So let's say we have a system like this that has initiation, development, design, implementation, and closeout, which could be for a specific type of project. It's pretty generic there. You can see listed underneath a variety of deliverables that are output, project management deliverables that are output for the project. For these gates, decision gate systems, there are also more specific ones for different types of projects, different sectors. Process plant could have something like this, and these different stages again, stage 0, which is actually just the initiation stage, concept selection, preliminary design, definition, detailed design, construction, pre-commissioning, commissioning and startup, and closeout. And at each of these stages, at the beginning of each stage, there's a decision gate meeting or stage gate meeting. There are gatekeepers, and it's a thorough review of what has been done and decisions for making steps forward. And this is very important for your team. Your team needs to work with the project steering committee and also with the gatekeepers selected for making those decisions. And that's just one of the very important functions. There's a variety of very important functions, but that's one of them for your team to be on these very significant gatekeeper meetings. And in shipbuilding, we have something like this. That's a generic. It's each shipyard, each project, each company would likely have something slightly different than this, but this is an example of one that was developed, and same principles of making decisions. Why do projects need so much alignment? Why do we need to get things off to a good start every single time we start a project? There's lots of experience out there. People do lots of projects, and people learn a lot, and organizations set themselves up. They are projectized, and they have the OPA, organizational process assets, to do it. But why do we need to reconvening and making sure we're all going in the correct directions? Well, for example, we have variables on projects. These are the organizational process assets, for example. TTGFGs are templates, tools, guidelines, and forms. No two companies have identical sets of these types of tools for running their projects. They vary a lot. They are customized for whatever particular sector the company is in, what business area they're going in, the types of projects, the size. We have benchmarking, different measurements of success and past history of projects. Planning is never done the same between two types of projects. Very little of it is identical from one project to another. metrics being measurements of how you're doing. Digitization, maybe some companies do a lot of stuff online, or they have a lot of field equipment for progress measurement out in the field for measuring quantities, or a lot of digitalization in the design where people are doing these models, these 3D models for virtual design, collaborative design, rather than just CAD on a computer screen or paper. You've also got dashboarding, monitoring and control, all that good stuff. It's this stuff varies. No matter how good you are and what kind of company you're in, it's complex enough that people have to convene and make sure that they're all working in the same vein. There are other processes also. We have now, I'm not an expert at the IT processes, but I can certainly mention, for example, we have Agile, we have Lean. There's also a waterfall, which typically is construction and fabrication, which I'm most familiar with. And there are ways to do things. And again, none of these are cast in stone. They can be customized, modified, used in various locations by various people in different styles. And so you're never going to get an exact jigsaw puzzle piece match from one project to another, or one person to another. All of this needs to be smoothed out. This needs to be planned, and people need to know exactly the breadcrumb trail, multiple breadcrumb trails in many cases that they're going to follow. Along the way then, there will likely be, if they do a stage gate, decision gate type of project management system, which is very common or very popular, extremely popular in waterfall, and that's the decision support packages and gatekeepers. We've got multiple people as gatekeepers, 2, 3 or more typically as gatekeepers with their own expertise, their own responsibilities, who will look at the decision support packages that are handed in between stages at certain points. And there's a whole regimen of things that need to be done. You need an early submission so that these people have days to look at it and make markups. You'll have very detailed presentations and backup behind the presentations. And the gatekeepers decide usually one of 4 things: to advance the project, recycle, which means go back and do some stuff over again, defer, which basically postpone, and cancel is like get rid of it. It's put it, of course you would never erase everything, but you'd put it in the archives and decide that it's not going ahead at all. So, but you always keep this stuff. You don't throw good knowledge away. Even if you cancel a project, it's still good information as to why you cancel it. Lessons learned, for example. Then we also have to have everybody lined up as to how we manage change. And just like that graphic I got there, which is a popular piece of clip art there, the people are being demonstrated, coached as to what happens if you need to do something, if you have option A or option B. Where are we going with these changes? We need, how do we get these changes managed properly? We have education, so people need training, and implement MOC, management of change processes. You gotta have good communication. Quite often you got these RFIs, which are requests for information, which I find pretty useful. You can end up swimming in it too. It's a lot of information. If you do it wrong, or if you just take untidy notes, and that you're going to be in trouble. But RFIs, those are good tools for getting questions back and forth between contractor and the consultant and or owner. a lot of complex stuff going on out there in the field, and a lot of questions back and forth, and you just can't do it with email. It might, if you only got 1 or 2 questions on a very simple project, it might be okay, but I wouldn't take the chance. I'd set up an RFI log, and I'd just keep going with RFIs. And you got your meetings, you got definitions of things. What a surveyor is in one project is not the same as a surveyor in another project. You got quantity surveyors, land surveyors, all that good stuff. And you got to identify when projects go under change, what changes are ahead, and when are we going to be told that something's coming up. So then you have to implement your changes. You have levels of approval. So this is something, again, at the beginning of your project, and possibly enhanced at the stage transitions, at the stage gates, is to confirm the level of approval. Who can give the nod to what? You know, well, what physical subject area or discipline can somebody give an approval to, and what is the dollar value for approval, and what are the protocols? Who does it need to go through? We have safety reviews, design reviews, cost impacts, schedule impacts, and all that good stuff. You'll also need your team to be on a good communication platform, and in meetings and otherwise, and pool their knowledge, pool their expertise, their resources, the documents they have, and to help you deal with all the different types of risks on a project. And this can only be done well if the team is working well together and they are aligned, they know the objectives, the sponsors' requirements that we mentioned earlier. And we utilize the expertise and the various inputs from these people, and we help them manage risk along the way in a continual basis. We had a bit of a traffic delay there, but we were thankful that there was a lot of mutual respect with the stakeholders, and I think it worked out very well. And it goes to show, being prepared for environmental and safety issues can come around as a helpful thing, and you create your own good luck sometimes. And just a further smile on this, we had, not me, but this is a picture I got from the internet, and don't know where it came from, but I thought it was worthy of showing for this presentation. Is got these moose occupying a pipeline trench. But if you have people who know a little bit about this sort of thing, they might be able to help without causing too much disruption or causing any problems, and the problem was solved. Here's a summary work breakdown structure, or WBS, and this is what takes the scope of the project, it breaks it down into pieces, and it describes the work packages that people on the project team will have to work on, and along with any subbed out consultants and subcontractors and other contractors. So the owner's project team will have responsibilities. Some will prime some of these work packages. Some will share work on some of these work packages. And of course, no two work breakdown structures are alike for different projects. The upper levels might be the same or similar with engineering, procurement, construction, pre-commissioning, and initial operating costs. That might be the same or similar. But as you break down into further detail. Each unique project will have its own unique work packages. Then once you've got work packages defined and subsets of that, you're going to have tasks, or what are more commonly called nowadays on software activities, for schedules of that. We want those major activities broken down so that the owner's project team knows who does what. And here we have a responsibility matrix. And in general, as per the Project Management Institute, it's a RAM, a RAM, Responsibilities Assignment Matrix. And there's a key at the bottom showing how each person on the team would pitch in and do that work or handle that work for that activity. And here's a more elaborate one. These can be also called, very commonly, popularly called RACIs, RACI, or I have liked to use RASCI, which is the Responsible, Accountable, Support, Consult, and Inform. Because if you get on a project that's big enough, got enough detail, and you're going to need somebody to have an extra piece of input on your activity, and go ask them lots of questions and so on, and help you out when you need help, then that would be a support. Also, when your team is getting aligned and getting used to all the definitions of all of those RASCI and RAM terminologies, we're also going to have to prepare progress reports. And these progress reports are quite often going to be asked to be reported in terms of earned value measurement. And if anybody on the project team isn't using the same standards and is not using the same terminology for earned value, then even if they're right on the previous project they were on, if they're not aligned with everybody else on the team for the current project, then we're going to have some inconsistencies in the reporting and some rework of the numbers of the status because somebody didn't quite catch on to what we understand at the beginning of the project, what we're going to do for earned value. So it's not to be taken too lightly. It's good to get it off on a good start at the beginning of the project before things get crazy with normal avalanches of work and there's not enough time to properly get everybody together and figure out how you're going to do your earned value and what the definitions of all your terms are. And this is just a graphic of an earned value table here, but it breaks down how you report by month and what the planned value, earned value, and actual cost terms are for each line item, and that each line item is measured in certain ways, in certain techniques, according to earned value, and everybody should be singing from the same songbook on that one. Here's an example with earned value methods. We've got percent complete, there's a 0-100 method, there's a milestone method, there's equivalent units, a 50-50 method, and an apportioned effort method. And of course, we would have to dig in and learn in a different session what earned value is all about, or several sessions, because, well, it's not difficult in the big picture, but there's a fair bit of detail to it and a little bit of practice needed to catch on to it. I'm on my final slide now for this new team's presentation. I'd like to mention the importance of championing the project. And from the beginning of the project, I think it's been demonstrated quite clearly that project success really gets enhanced when you've got a project manager, all other leadership roles with the project manager, the VP and the CEO over the project manager. If you've got those three entities championing the project, then you've got that extra bit of high octane gusto for your project. If you've got the executives, the VPs believing in what the project manager is doing when it comes to safety, and not just jumping the hoops and doing just enough for safety, but really advocating safety, really advocating these best practices. These charts and graphs were drawn up by companies over the past several decades, and just for wasting ink, this is well intended to be productive, safe, professional work. And if you've got a VP helping the project manager and helping the sponsor and believing what the project manager is trying to do, backing that person up and giving them support and making an atmosphere that we are optimistic, this is going to go well, good things happen to good people who follow good practice, and especially safety. Safety is number one. And then of course you got to look after your professional deliverables that you've promised to your client, and that it will work, and that it will be the cost that it should be, and keeping people appraised of where the tracking and the progress is coming. So thank you very much.